What can we learn from Donald Trump's past lives? Welcome to Trevor's Tarot, Astrology, and Spirituality. First up, a huge thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to everybody who likes, watches, comments on the videos, who's given suggestions for cold case videos and missing persons videos. Definitely looking into all of those. Um, if you've given money to the channel, a huge, huge thank you. The channel's starting to grow. That's very exciting. Hoping to do more cold cases as the channel gets a little bit bigger. Um, Cold cases take a little bit more time because I want to make sure that I'm really confident in what I'm saying because I don't want to mislead anybody on anything. So I have been working for the last, I don't know, month or so, looking into past lives of various people. I released a video on Elon Musk. I've been working on Donald Trump. His past lives are a little bit harder to decipher, with a few exceptions. There were a couple that I could see going back to like the ancient Egypt's times. It always seemed like he died very young, so there really wasn't much there to decipher. But by the time we get to like the seventh centuries, the 600s, the 700s, um, that's when the first life that I was able to pick up um, very clearly. So, and let's see what it is supposed to tell us about today, if anything. It might not tell us about um, his life today at all, although it seems relevant. So, I think this is someplace in Eastern Europe where he was a merchant uh, selling various things and interacting with the banking system. The language spoken sounded sort of like, you know, modern day Polish. So I'm thinking somewhere in like Poland, um, that kind of area. Um, so the interesting part about this that came up is it was so in a lot of readings that I've done on Donald Trump, the Nine of Cups comes up a lot. And generally we think of the Nine of Cups as wish fulfillment, but it's also other meaning as kind of like the greedy merchant. And it's made me kind of rethink some of the readings I've done on him in the past in this context now as seeing him as a merchant. Um, in this particular life, it's very clear that he didn't do business above board. Um, Looked like he probably took bribes, maybe used bribes uh, to get away with like bribing, people who would have been enforcing the laws in order to take money from people that were buying goods from him without delivering the actual goods that were promised. This ultimately did catch up with him, uh, and it looked like he was convicted twice for theft, I would guess. Uh, the first conviction, the punishment was a branding where they took, and I could see this very vividly and I could smell it too, which was very disturbing. They took a hot iron and they stuck it on his ear and basically burned away one of his ears. It was essentially shriveled up and scabbed up and fell off. Um, the second time was a little bit more gruesome. Not that that wasn't gruesome because it was. The second time, they chopped off his right hand, and eventually this led to his developing some sort of like gangrene or something like that. He died shortly after that. So um he was made to endure some public humiliation as well, as these both of these events took place in public. Um so has that influenced his current life that he's living now? So his life as, we'll just call it the greedy merchant. Life as the greedy merchant in the 600s, 700s, somewhere, I think Eastern Europe. Does that influence his life today? And if so, how? So that influences his life today. So in the water, I see the Five of Cups, which is about loss. Now, this could be loss of reputation, which I think he is somewhat feeling in the current day compared to before he ran for president. I think his reputation has diminished rapidly from then. Most people gain reputable stuff when they become president. I think he actually lost a little bit of reputation points, so to speak. It's like, what's about today, the greedy merchant? Do you think this might be why he's so obsessed with his hands, his, small hands? Let's see. So we get the Queen of Cups, which is normally about empathy and feeling emotions and being really in charge of emotions. But in this case, I think it's actually the opposite of that. I don't think he was in charge of his emotions in the previous life that we've talked about, and I don't think he's in charge of his emotions now. Here's the Eight of Cups, walking away from things that don't serve him quickly. So quickly abandoning things. And I think that was the tale of the merchant in the 600, 700, 7th century, something like that. Um, when he couldn't make a profit legitly, he turned to trying to make a profit um, in other ways that were less legal, so to speak. And this is a theme in the second life that we're going to talk about as well. We get the Page of Wands. He was used to send a message in this previous life. And I think in this current iteration, he's also being used to send a message to the world. What that message is and how it's interpreted is up for questions. We get the Queen of Swords and the environment around. Um, he seems in the previous iteration to be quite logical about his thievery. I don't know that he is so much today, but I think when he was younger, he probably was more pragmatic about how he went about skirting the laws versus as he's been older and became president and Supreme Court said he has immunity against things. I think he's just become more blatant. So I don't think he learned the lesson. The center of the reading is families and reunions. And I think this is exactly right. I think these are the people that he chooses to use for personal gain. He chooses to prey upon people's fears. He chooses to prey upon people's wants and desires and never fulfills his end of the bargain of giving them what they're looking for. For example, in modern day, in this iteration, Trump University would be a great example of this, promising wealth and fortune, but didn't deliver anything. Um, and the iteration of that we're talking about from the 7th century or thereabouts, um, selling goods and services that promised something, although they didn't deliver anything. And I think that's ultimately why he was convicted of being a thief. With the sun card and the environment around, he was caught in the previous iteration. Everything was showed, and it happened in public. It was very clear that he was publicly humiliated, uh, branded in public, hand cut off in public, people throwing things at him, spitting on him, everything you can think of happening in terms of public humiliation as a punishment was essentially done. And I think that's what the Sun card is about. Justice. He received justice then, and he's going to receive justice now. Now, if you're a fan of Donald Trump, you're probably not watching this channel, but if you are, you probably aren't anymore. But he's going to receive justice in this iteration as well. But in the iteration that we're talking about from the 7th century, he really did receive justice. Like it was there, everybody saw it. I don't know that that's what's going to happen in this life that he's currently living, but it might be a karmic justice. It might be reliving and rehashing a lot of pain at the end of this iteration. We get the Knight of Swords in the environment around, things happening rapidly, people really coming for him, right? The knight here has his sword held up, ready to attack. And that's in the environment around. That's how people feel about him today. And that's how people felt about him then in the previous iteration that we're talking about. People were ready to attack. And we get the Knight of Cups, steadiness and delivering an emotional message. So the lack of empathy with respect to families' wants and needs leads to emotional stories being told about him, which makes people not like him. That was true in the 7th century life, and it's true today. Now, in the 7th century, justice came because of the way he treated people, which led to a fiery message being delivered, which ultimately led to his death, right? Hand being chopped off in public humiliation. In the environment around, he has a hard time when things don't come quickly to him. He'll just walk away. I think that's true in this iteration too. He'll scheme and scam to get ahead in this life. He schemed and scammed in the previous life to get ahead as well. In the previous iteration, though, he was more logical about how he did it. It took a while before he was caught. And I guess that's probably true in this iteration too. I mean, I don't think people looking back in the 80s thought of him as being criminal. Some did, but definitely by the time he became president, people thought that. People were out to destroy him, for the lack of a better word. I think that's true today too. And people have their reasons. And those reasons got revealed in the previous iteration with the Sun card. Now, in the iteration that he's currently going through, I think some things have been revealed, but not everything. And when that happens, I think there might be more of this coming. Although I do think it's a karmic justice. I don't think it's uh, legally enforced. Uh, we get the Lovers card, unlikely partnerships. That was true then and true now. We get the Chariot card. I think this is where he got used to the idea of being a criminal, taking advantage of families, children. Um, Talked about this on my other channel before. The Chariot card seems to be representing human trafficking, like what they're doing with the the deportations in the United States, which I don't think you can call anything but human trafficking. Now, of course, there's other connotations to human trafficking. I'll let your imagination go on that one. We get the Emperor, the card for the presidency, abuse of power. Um, Makes perfect sense. Then things coming to the surface is what happened in the 7th century. He was found out, and then the burdens were born, and he had to carry them, which ultimately led to his death. Why was he killed? He was killed because he was the greedy merchant. He was the thief, the Nine of Cups. So it makes perfect sense. Uh, it's interesting how tarot works that way with the Nine of Cups coming up. Okay, so the second life iteration that I was able to pick up on was interesting. One where he may have crossed paths with Elon Musk. I question that a little bit. I'm not going to go as far as to say that that's true, but he also seemed to live a life as a Catholic priest at one time. And you might say, well, that doesn't sound right. But he was not a good priest. Uh, he was one of the priests that really got into this idea of selling indulgences, selling tickets to heaven and pocketing the money. He didn't give the money to the church, he just kept the money. It seemed like he was positioned on the outskirts of a metropolitan area, but the church itself was kind of on the smaller side, to where it was certainly overseen by the Catholic Church as a whole, but um, it felt like it was, again, somewhere in Europe. I don't think it was in Italy. I think it was maybe maybe France. That seems right. Um, but positioned near a big city to where it wouldn't have been hard to travel to the city. So he's selling indulgences, taking advantage of families, promising that their dead ones would get into heaven if you just bought this indulgence. Um, you could go sin as long as you pay for this indulgence. Um, and he needed the money because he was using the money in this life basically almost exclusively on, cover your ears if you don't want to hear this word, prostitution. So here he is selling these indulgences. He wasn't celibate. He was paying for prostitutes. I don't know any nicer way to say that, so I'm sorry if that's offensive. I don't certainly mean it that. I just mean to convey the facts as I see them. Now, he died young in this life too, like in the 30s, maybe early 40s. I don't think quite that old. Um, and it felt like because I could feel it. It felt like a heart issue, and because I could see his hands, and I wonder if this is not why his hands are such a big deal to him. His hands are covered in like a rash. Um, I'm not a medical doctor, but I wondered if this wasn't, and maybe somebody knows more about this than me. I wondered if maybe this wasn't like uh, an STD or syphilis. I know syphilis can affect your heart. I know it can cause rashes, but I didn't think, I thought the rashes kind of happened early on. And like, if you died from syphilis, it was like 10, 15 years after you contracted it, which I guess would kind of fit the time bill. I'm not sure if it can cause heart attacks, but that's what it felt like. So, what should we learn from this iteration of his life? So, uh, priest for the position and power only had nothing to do with wanting to help people, just like the greedy merchant. This seems to be a common theme on the lives I've picked up. What should we know about this iteration of his soul? His soul is good, as he told us. Supposed to know. Yeah, it's an odd image in the scrying bowl. It's the Hierophant card, but it's like somebody threw a bunch of ink on it. I can make out that it's the Hierophant, but it's covered in ink. I'm not sure. I guess the representation might be like spitting in the face of God or spitting in the face of the church or um, defaming the Pope, maybe something along those lines. Let's see what the cards say. See if they maybe can't give us some more insights. What are we supposed to? I just heard the phrase "I alone can fix it," which I know he said during one of his presidential runs. But I wonder if he wasn't saying that in this iteration, like, "Oh, your son died and isn't probably going to heaven, but I and I alone can fix it if you buy this indulgence." Hmm. Let's see what the cards say. We get the Empress card. It's interesting. So that could be about fertility. It could be about the mother. It could be about the unborn in this case. Lots of romantic partnerships in the surrounding energies or the environment around. I think this is true of his life in this current iteration, right? I think he's had his fair number of romantic partnerships. Lots of anxiety about that. That's interesting. Let's keep going. I think the anxiety is about his soul, which is interesting. The Three of Pentacles circles of support around money. I think he had some other priests in the region that were also selling indulgences. I don't think he was the only one. Guardrails are at the center of the reading. In particular, him not following the guardrails, him not playing by the rules, I think is what this is going to end up being. With the devil and the environment around, abusing power, mis and disinformation, trickery, thievery, betrayal, that type of energy. With the Eight of Swords, being confined, feeling trapped, isolated and alone. We get the Four of Swords, ill health. I think this is the syphilis. And we get the Ten of Wands, really heavy burdens. So I think this actually is representing uh, fertility, and something might have happened with regards to this in his the iteration as the priest, which might have led to some what's the word? Um, him doing some things that would probably seem fairly regrettable to most of us. So I just wonder if he didn't get somebody uh, pregnant and then basically sent them away. That's what I'm getting. I guess yeah. I think being a priest felt very confining, so therefore he thought he could break the rules. Um, but that caused him a lot of anxiety. And I think that's exactly what's going on now. I think he has a lot of anxiety. It just manifests itself in very bizarre ways that, we're not. I mean, anxiety always manifests itself in different ways for everybody. You know, some people have nervous tics, some people talk too much, some people ramble, like he kind of rambles. He calls it the weave. That's like could be a sign of anxiety. In the environment around, he had partners that he was corrupt with, similar to today. And he had a lot of romantic relationships. Romance is not the right word, it's just a kinder word than just saying intimate relationships. I guess it's not too unkind. That led to some ill health. And I think, again, this feels like in some sort of syphilis infection, something along those lines. And the devil energy was very much present. And this is just the energy he gives off in this iteration of being one to deceive, misinform, send disinformation, take advantage of, betray, um, steal. I think all of those are valid things that he did in this life, in that life. Uh, we get the card for the Wheel of Fortune, standing on a knife's edge, living a very dangerous life. We get the card for dementia. That's interesting. Syphilis can cause that effect as well. And people did eventually figure out the truth about him. I do think when he died, he was not respected. He might have even been defrocked. I didn't pick that up exactly when I was scrying, but it feels like it was known towards the end that he was doing these things. And they weren't exactly frowned upon. What was frowned upon was not giving the money to the church, or at least a portion of it to the church. So, okay. So that was the second iteration I was able to pick up on. This last iteration is somewhat recent in the uh, early 1800s. So there we go. Used to say. So, uh, not completely positive about who he was, but I'll give you an idea of who I think it could be, or somebody that kind of fits the story. So I think he was the son of a prominent politician. Uh, he was very active in, so this was pre-Civil War 1800s. He was very active in uh, fighting for slavery. He himself, I think, wanted to be a politician, but I think his health wasn't good. Uh, I feel like he died young because of some health issues. And that's why he was never able to emerge as a politician, because he just didn't live long enough. Um, if like I could see images of the the Trail of Tears. So I think he could have been the son of a politician who voted for that act when Andrew Jackson was president. I forget what the actual act was called. It was somewhat offensively named. So the Indian Removal Act, maybe something like that. Um, this could explain his fascination with Andrew Jackson. I think he was like, again, I think he was the son of a politician who maybe was a senator for for Andrew Jackson. Feels like his father was of significant import. This also makes me wonder if this isn't why he's so opposed to names being removed off of buildings. I think his father could have been that prominent that it could be a name like a slave trader turned politician, like a Tillman or Calhoun, perhaps something along those lines. I don't know for sure that that's who it is, but that's just the energies. It felt very much like that. And it felt very much like he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, but never could live up to it. But this had to do with ill health. So, feels like he died in his early mid 30s, maybe something along those lines. Um, yeah. Okay. So, what do we need to know about this iteration? What's this iteration tell us? And then we'll ask what we need to know about the current iteration. What's this iteration? Two cards popped out. The Seven of Cups, illusion and delusion, and the Ten of Wands, really heavy burdens. I'm just going to lay those to the side. I think the Seven of Cups is about, at least in the iteration of this life from the 1800s that we're talking about, of seeing himself more important than he actually was, and then also bearing the burdens of living under the lifeline of a father who was quite successful. I think that's what those are about. I'm just going to set them there in case we want to refer to them again. Okay. So with the Page of Swords, spy in the camp, um, immaturity, the lack of logic. We get the Two of Swords and the environment around, having to make choices. You know, in this case, the depiction is juggling knives, right? They're swords, but uh, get the Four of Pentacles, financial stability. I do feel like there were he was not worried about money in this iteration. We get the Ten of Swords, complete and utter downfall, the end of a dark cycle. The center of the reading, we get the Nine of Wands again, guardrails. In this case, again, I think this is about breaking guardrails, not following the guardrails. We get the Empress as well in the environment around. I guess the Empress was up here last time. We get the King of Pentacles. This is sometimes my card for him in modern times. The rich um, man, the King of Pentacles. Repayments of loans and debts or trades. I feel like this is slave trading. I think he was very much involved in that. And we get the Five of Cups, loss. So, so his immaturity in that iteration, breaking guardrails led to loss, or in this case, death. So he very well might have died of again, of some sort of sexually transmitted disease, or got into fight maybe and was, suffered a wound that became infected, something along those lines. And that's how he died so young. Um, Not sure. He was quite wealthy, or at least his father was, which meant that he could afford to break guardrails, didn't have to worry about consequences. And that allowed a lot of stability in his life, which allowed him to do a lot of different things that a lot of people wouldn't get to do. So I think he got to run businesses without any um, putting any money into it himself. Like his father just set him up. So some bad choices, though. Looks like it involves women again. Uh, Perhaps prostitution again. Uh, Leads to the ultimate downfall, being stabbed in the back, the end of the iteration. So I'm not sure how he died as a priest. It felt like a heart attack, but it could have been somebody taking him out with some poison as well. You never know. Feels like in this iteration, like he wasn't murdered per se, but he had a wound inflicted that gets infected and then dies. But yeah, it's like they wanted his head, the Seven of Swords, the thieving, the trickery. I don't know if this had to do with women or if this had to do with um, business. It feels more like adultery to me, which caused judgment to be passed. And then we get the Queen of Pentacles. He just played with the wrong person. Uh, and that's what led to the downfall here. But still, I think he was very much involved in the slave trade. That's what it feels like. And the idealization of Andrew Jackson, who I don't know how anybody can idealize Andrew Jackson if you actually read about Andrew Jackson. Um, I think it's because his father in this iteration was somebody who worked closely. It's either Senator Calhoun doesn't sound right. Calhoun was the vice president, right? I don't think that's right, but something along those lines. I don't think it was Calhoun, but something along those lines. Somebody that was close to Andrew Jackson, definitely somebody in the South. Um, so, but that was his father. His father was the prominent figure. He was not, and I think there was some envy and jealousy of his father's prominence. Okay, so what do we need to know about this current iteration? Let's just ask that to sum up this reading. What do we need to know about his current iteration? What should we take away from it? How do these past lives influence it? Is there anything we need to know about his current iteration? Six of Pentacles, very clear in the water. Very much about, I got your back. Well, let me rephrase it. Very much about giving and receiving of loans and debts or things of value. He's maybe not so good at paying them back. With the Seven of Swords, exactly. Thievery, chicory, lying. In this case, it's a man perjuring himself on the witness stand, constantly lying. We get the Tower, breaking down of structures around us. I think we see that currently. We get temperance, we get moderation. It's in the upper right. That's a good spot for it. You get the Nine of Pentacles, having everything you need financially, not needing to worry in the environment around. At the center of the reading, we get the Six of Wands, victory. This, I think, is him becoming president. We get the Six of Pentacles, exactly, giving and receiving of loans and debts, repayments, giving and receiving things of value, whatever is of value, right? After a certain point, when you're super rich, I don't think money is the things that are of value anymore. But I could be wrong about that because I have no idea what it means to be super rich. The Three of Pentacles, circles of support around money. This makes a lot of sense. The Eight of Pentacles, the Apprentice card. If one plan doesn't work, try another. And the Three of Cups, circles of support and celebrations. Okay. So through his lies and his deceit, he was able to achieve things, success in business, perhaps, fraudulently, most likely, success in becoming a successful politician, whatever your definition of success is, but at least getting into the White House. And then we have the Three of Cups, circles of support and celebration around that. And it's three people. Those three people, I think, are Putin and Musk. The Three of Pentacles, circles of support around money. Again, feels like Putin, Musk, and him. Helped to get him to victory, which kept his life moderate. Rather than being like in the first iteration of the greedy merchant, when he gets his hand cut off and dies from an infection, or the second iteration where he dies of syphilis, or the third iteration where he possibly dies from, a wound inflicted by somebody else. Here he gets saved, so to speak, with temperance. So not as good as I was hoping it was going to be, but that makes sense. And the environment around, he's tearing down structures such as laws, not following the law, uh, threatening democracy, threatening other countries, tearing down social norms. Why? Because he's always had everything that he needed. He doesn't care. It's pretty much that simple. And he's going to do whatever he needs to do to get what he wants, because if one plan doesn't work, he's going to try another. And he's not above taking money from others to help himself, even if he has money or things of value, whatever they might be. So I think that explains his current life. I don't think that this is not what I mean that the outcome of this current iteration is going to be. I'm just saying this explains where we're currently at, the current energy of this iteration. Underneath, we get the Five of Wands, fighting, frustration, protests. Certainly explains what's going on. The Ten of Wands, he feels some pretty heavy burdens. There's things behind the scenes that we don't know about. With the High Priestess, the Two of Pentacles probably involves foreign governments and money. And yeah, so I think that pretty much explains his current situation pretty accurately, and explains how everything was influenced by some of the things from the previous lives. Not everything, but a lot of it certainly is there. Anyhow. All right. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with another video soon.